Hello everyone, and welcome to Frost Ranks, every stage in Sonic Lost World from worst to best. This game stage is very widely in terms of quality, and I think it's only fair we give each stage its rightful place in platforming hell. Before we jump in though, let's establish some quick ground rules. I'm only going to be ranking the 28 stages included in the main game. I'm not covering DLC or post-game content. The DLC rips so heavily from the main game it barely has a reason to exist, and the post-game stuff just isn't worth talking about if I'm being honest. Second, I am considering boss fights for this list as I consider a boss fight to be part of a stage, not separate from it. However, I won't be going over every fight in depth because that would be insanely repetitive. Third, I won't be considering music for this list since musical taste is far too subjective and I'd rather focus on level design, difficulty, area variety, game mechanics, etc. With that stuff clear, let's jump into the list. Number 28, Lava Mountain Act 1. This stage is fucking terrible. It isn't even really a stage. It's a generic boss rush against members of the Deadly Six you've already fought, and they didn't even bother to design different boss fights for the repeat encounters. The only noticeable change is the environment. The fights are just as easy and just as boring as the early game versions. The only good thing is the stage ends quickly so the suffering isn't long term. Not much else to say beyond that. This is a garbage stage adding nothing to the experience and it shouldn't be in the game. It's fucking terrible. Moving on. Number 27, Frozen Factory Act 2. I'm sure many of you expected this stage to be rock bottom, but I will grant it one boon. Frozen Factory 2 is a terrible level, but at least it's actually a level, unlike Lava Mountain 1. But if you haven't played this game, you might ask, why is the stage so terrible? 3 words. The fucking snowball. Okay, it's not just the snowball, but there's a lot to unpack, so let's start there. This snowball controls like absolute dog shit. It takes forever to pick up speed, forever to slow down, and forever to change direction. Are you noticing a pattern yet? And if you're wondering about the spin dash, it'll just as easily screw you over as help you in this stage since you can barely tell which direction Sonic is going to go when you use it. But here's the thing. The rough control wouldn't be that bad if the level design were more accommodating toward it, but for some reason I will never understand, the developers chose to pair tank controls with thin platforms and no barriers. It is so easy to fall off the side of these things. If your momentum takes you in the wrong direction, you are fucked, because you will not be able to stop in time. Even if you do somehow, your reprieve will be short-lived since these damn robotic roosters are plastered all over the second half of this level and they will make their presence known. They'll either blow you off the stage directly, or mess with your control enough you get hit by something else and fall off as a result of that, or you overcorrect for the rooster's effects and kill yourself while you're trying to recover from the initial change in direction. It's asinine. Not to mention these goddamn snow monster enemies that have the same function. It's also worth noting you can only collect rings in this stage by touching a checkpoint, meaning if you die, the only way to survive another hit after respawning is to reach another checkpoint. And good luck with that, because those are few and far between. This game is somewhat infamous for its gimmicky levels, and while I think much of that gimmick-related criticism is unfairly harsh, this particular gimmick is just fucking infuriating. I have no clue how this stage passed QA testing, assuming Sega actually did some in the first place. I could nitpick this stage into an early grave, but I won't waste any more time than I have to. This stage is laughably terrible. Number 26, Lava Mountain Act 4. Another stage which only exists to house a boss fight. It beats Lava Mountain 1 since it's at least better than fighting the Deadly Six, although pretty much anything is better than fighting the Deadly Six, so that's not really saying much. As for the boss itself, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's pretty bland and extremely underwhelming for a Sonic the Hedgehog final boss. Perfect Chaos, the Final Hazard, Metal Overlord, Solaris, Dark Gaia, they're all way more memorable than this fight with far more varied mechanics and strategies. This boss is just avoid the green orbs, then homing attack a few times and you're done. Not a very good way to end your game. Number 25, Sky Road Act 3. This stage is an auto-scroller with one big problem. The controls suck. Okay, suck is probably too excessive. It's wonky, but you get used to it after a while. The real problem here is a lack of actual level design. All you're doing is slowly moving up and down to avoid enemies, then fighting a pathetically easy mini-boss at the end. The blocks of dirt in the background look like they were ripped straight out of an 8-year-old's Minecraft project. It's so lazily arranged. Also, whenever you take damage in this stage, Sonic's control locks up so he can't move up or down, leaving you helpless if another hazard comes toward you right when your invincibility ends. I'm not sure what the vision was for this stage, but I don't think the devs knew either. This could have been left out and the game wouldn't have skipped a beat. Number 24, Desert Ruins Act 4. At this point, we're past the stages that are just outright terrible, but believe me, there are still grievances to air. This stage is another auto-scroller with an insta-kill tornado following you. The major issue is pacing. The screen moves so slowly you're waiting on the tornado to catch up to you half the time, which is the worst kind of problem an auto-scrolling stage can have. Think of open world games where you have to follow an NPC that runs half as fast as you do. The stage has some decent level design using the drill wisp, so I'll give it that, especially since the drill wisp is one of the lesser offenders in this game in terms of not having a purpose in a stage. The boss fight has the same problems. Zomom's attacks are so telegraphed, getting hit is basically an impossibility. A few homing attacks and the torture is over. Number 23, Windy Hill Act 4. This stage gets the nod over Desert Ruins 4 because of superior level design. It's not an auto-scroller, so the stage has better pacing and the difficulty is more balanced since you actually have to think to avoid some of the hazards. You can go really fast with some precision, but you aren't punished for not doing so. However, the stage also doesn't excel in anything, and it's also rocking yet another boring as fuck boss fight, but that's normal for this game, so not too surprising. Number 22, Frozen Factory Act 4. Could have been really fun if the controls weren't so awful. And because every platformer has to have an ice world for some reason, you knew I would bring this up eventually. Sonic loses his double jump completely when on ice, so altering his movements or changing his trajectory is not an option for about half the stage. The spin dash is also useless on ice, so don't bother trying to use it since all Sonic will do is roll around in place like a dog chasing its tail. There's also one scripted event that doesn't work as intended, or at least I don't think it does. Near the end, Sonic launches off a ramp to cross a large chasm only to hit the edge on the other side and die. I'm not sure if the devs expected you to jump here or not, but if they did, those people must have some godlike reflexes. There's also a 2D non-ice portion with these gears you have to use to go up, but they're a little finicky since it's kinda difficult to tell when Sonic is in the right spot. So you think you're on the gear, but you just run off the side instead. I like the moving platforms that crush you if you get caught under them, but that's not exactly groundbreaking design for a platformer, you know? Oh yeah, and the boss fight is terrible. For redundancy's sake, I won't say any more. Number 21, Tropical Coast Act 2. This is a weird one for me. Here we get an introduction to the massive fruit gimmick. You have to move them into the blenders to open a pathway to the next area, but each fruit has a slightly different movement pattern. The apple just slowly follows Sonic around, but the watermelon follows more quickly and can slam the ground to generate electricity you can get hit by. Navigating the fruits is nothing groundbreaking, but it gives you a little something extra to think about. Honestly, I had a lot of fun while playing this one, but after watching back footage and writing most of the script, I think I overrated it initially by a mile. At one point I had this stage in the top 5 and I really don't know what I was thinking. It doesn't deserve to be that high, but it's satisfactory in its own right. Number 20, Frozen Factory Act 1. These ice physics just won't go away, huh? It's not as rough as previous levels though. The pathways are a lot wider and more forgiving to Sonic's controls. Most larger areas have multiple routes, so with some effort you can avoid the worst of the icy areas. Clever placement of certain platforms makes it so falling simply results in a small loss of progress with the option of taking a different route to get back up, which eliminates unnecessary repetition. There's also this section with bouncing clouds, which is a bit sluggish but ultimately harmless. This stage provides opportunities to use just about every movement option Sonic has in this game. When you aren't fighting the controls and physics, that is. If not for the ice physics, this stage will be ranked much higher, but as it stands, it's just okay. Number 19, Windy Hill Act 2. A nice tone here. Starts at twilight and ends at night, giving a nice sense of progression. The level design is rather tame, which is understandable since this is a very early level. Granted, these windmills are not my favorite platforms to interact with since jumping on them is quite sluggish. And to make things even better, this level introduces another completely unnecessary wisp, the asteroid. It lets you destroy objects and turn them into rocks that orbit around Sonic. This is a thing, I guess, but why is it here? My biggest issue with the wisps in this game is unlike Sonic Colors, the levels don't seem to be designed from the ground up with the wisps in mind. It seems the levels were designed first, then the wisps were just shoved in wherever the developers felt like putting them. I touch on this in more detail in my review of Sonic Lost World, so check it out if you're interested. Links in the description. Despite what the length of this summary might have you believe, this level is not long at all. I beat it in under 2 minutes. Not that being longer would help its case, since other levels do far more interesting things with their design. This stage isn't terrible, of course, but it's not memorable either. Number 18, Desert Ruins Act 2. Nothing but running on rails and free falling. You're moving down hexagonal structures and you can move left or right to change which side you're running on. Think of Sonic 06's Mach Speed sections or Sonic and the Secret Rings on rails style if you need a comparison. I can give this level credit for trying to mix things up and changing the pace of the game a little bit. You aren't asked to do any crazy jumps or react to things within a quarter of a second to not die, so you probably won't be doing any raging. The track being made of a lot of honeycombs is kind of cool too, reminds me of Honey Hive from Super Mario Galaxy. Not much else to cover besides, oh yeah, the boss fight sucks. It's the only legitimately bad thing about this stage. That said, I think this is where we turn the corner in terms of stages not having a ton of glaring issues that can make them unfun to play. Number 17, Lava Mountain Act 2. This level is somewhat infamous among Sonic fans, but I personally think the hate is overblown. It's a long grinding stage with loads of pitfalls and opportunities to die, so it can be a life killer, especially if you haven't been going out of your way to save up. The stage environments are really interesting and calming. It alternates between an underwater aquarium style backdrop and a factory slash coal mine slash missile silo slash whatever the fuck you think this place is. There are some annoying jumps, but I'd argue that's more related to the camera not providing a good view than the level design actively screwing over the player. Now as for the insta-kill explosive minecarts, yeah, they could have left those out or at least thinned out their number, since they can appear in groups of 4 or 5, which can make them really damn difficult to dodge. Otherwise, the stage is well balanced. The pace isn't too fast or too slow, and I like the parts where the doors are closing in, forcing you to find the gap to avoid smacking into them. I understand why someone wouldn't like this stage, and to be fair, when I was a kid, I didn't like it either. But nowadays, I consider it much better than I did before. Number 16, Tropical Coast Act 1. A nice open level with chances to spin dash through waves of enemies to your heart's content, so the sense of speed is really solid. As long as you don't get stuck inside this weird metal ball thing. I don't really know why this is here, it's not fun at all to use, but you can easily avoid it, so no harm done, I guess. There's a good use of verticality at certain points, making wall running a strong option, which isn't as common as it should be in this game. There's also a section where you have to jump on clouds, but unlike Frozen Factory 1, this one has smaller platforms and better goodies to collect if you don't make mistakes, so it's more interesting. This stage lets you play how you want, and I think stages like that are the best kind. You can race to the end, or you can take a more delicate approach. I enjoy it pretty much the whole way through. Number 15, Sky Road Act 4. A nice background here with the dark clouds and thunderstorms. Much more unique than the clear blue skies frequenting this game, particularly in the earlier worlds. There's also good variety in the level design, containing one of the more challenging 2D platforming sections in the game, followed by this nice part with the sand slide, and the level switches between the two, so neither overstays its welcome. Plenty of opportunities to get hit, but also plenty of chances to push Sonic to his fullest potential. However, I will be doing you all a disservice by not mentioning the Rhythm Wisp, since it's another pitiful addition to this game. No, I will not stop talking about how bad these wisps are. It just adds a line of notes for you to jump across. That's it. Completely unnecessary and adds nothing to the experience. Only thing left to highlight is the boss fight, although this time I have more to say than just it sucks. Getting the final hit on Zavik is a bit awkward. You're meant to let your homing attack charge up to max strength before hitting him to knock him off, but sometimes it seems like you've locked on enough, only to have your attack nullified. You have to wait much longer than you intuitively would, but I don't want to make it seem worse than it is. It's really a minor problem at the end of the day. Number 14, Windy Hill Act 1. A really good intro stage, albeit another entry in a long line of Sonic games that just can't fucking stop using Green Hill as the gold standard template for a first stage. Sonic gains a good amount of speed, and the structure of multiple pathways sets a tone early for the game's 3D environment. The game presents you options so you can methodically choose the one you find the most appealing. This differs from, say, Sonic Generations, where access to certain pathways is highly dependent on reaction times and prior knowledge of the stage. A number of distinct ideas are packed in without making the trek too long or overbearing. Nothing serious to complain about. Number 13, Desert Ruins Act 1. Just like Windy Hill 1, this stage has vast open areas perfect for Sonic's controls. However, there are more opportunities to be slowed down by the deep sand, environmental hazards, and slightly more aggressive enemies. I like the massive worms that chase after you in the 2D sections. They can attack from any side of the screen, and getting eaten by one is an instant kill. But putting yourself at risk to the worms is required to get certain items or take faster paths, so it sets up a nice risk versus reward dynamic. The stage is also one of the best for wall running to grab platforms and move more quickly. It's basically Windy Hill 1, but more. Bigger scale and more ambitious. It does have an incredibly overdone desert theme, but cliché locations run rampant in this game, so it is what it is. Number 12, Silent Forest Act 3. Did you think we were done talking about ice physics? Because if you did, you were very mistaken. Unlike stages I've already covered where fucking up on the ice is often a one-way ticket straight back to the last checkpoint, that's not usually the case here. Because this stage is a tube-style affair, there's more focus on left-to-right maneuvering and less on precision jumping, which reduces the amount of bullshit you'll deal with. Enemies and hazards force you to alter your path a lot, but you're given plenty of time to react, so there's no real pressure to make snap movements that can cause a loss of control. The dark cave setting is one of the better backdrops in the game, but not as interesting as the next one we're going to talk about. This is a case where the ice physics don't actively detract from the experience. Number 11, Frozen Factory Act 3. I really like the casino theme for this one. I know this location is also pretty stale in platformers, or maybe it's just Sonic games, I don't know. But this specific take on it resonates with me a lot, especially the art style, lighting, and shading. The pinball minigame was a bit rough, but in the game's defense, I was kind of rushing since I recorded all the footage for this video in one session, and after a while I just wanted to get a move on. If I'd taken my time with it a bit more, it probably wouldn't have been nearly as frustrating. Regardless, the stage has several casino minigames you can participate in to get more rings or increase your score. It's also a more open level, and I already explained why I enjoy that, so I won't keep repeating myself. This stage has nice level design, but the atmosphere is the best part, and this is no doubt one of the most memorable stages in the game, despite not being one of the very best. Number 10, Sky Road Act 2. This level features a bunch of robotic dragons for Sonic to use as mobile platforms. It's a more creative take on auto-scrolling since the dragons actually move fast enough to punish you if you're going too slow, and in a few cases you have to wait for a dragon to move into position before continuing, which keeps you from just getting into autopilot mode and never letting go of right. They can also shoot lasers at you, which you have to use the regular platforms to block, and those are quite small, so using the double jump is critical in this stage. It's rather short but well designed and offers a balanced challenge. Number 9, Sky Road Act 1. This level rips content from Windy Hill 1 a bit more than I'd like. In fact, if you put the two levels side by side, they will look like mirror images of one another. This one is better though for the same reason Desert Ruins 1 is. It has a bigger scale and you have more to do and interact with. It's also got the Eagle Wisp, which is fine, but you know how I feel about the Wisp situation at this point. This stage takes a lot of ideas from other stages and does more with them. It has really nice Mach speed sections with a lot more twists and turns than Desert Ruins 2 and a lot more pits, but also more to look at. The cloud-based mini-boss at the end isn't so bad either. There's a nice tone as well. You really feel like you're in the sky when you're playing this one. Number 8. Windy Hill Act 3. This is a slightly better version of Silent Forest 3, and I'll give you 3 guesses why. That's right, no damn ice physics. But everything else I said about Silent Forest 3 also applies here, so I won't repeat myself. Other than rocking another completely optional but poorly implemented Wisp power-up, there's nothing else to say. The 2 stages are honestly way too similar, and one definitely should have been cut or reworked somehow. Number 7. Silent Forest Act 1. Okay, now we're getting into the truly excellent levels. This stage is another tube-style adventure, but it incorporates lots of grinding in combination with tricky to avoid hazards. Unlike some earlier levels, the obstacles here are more densely packed together, not to mention the mud that damages you on contact. I also love the environment and cartoony depictions of the enemies, particularly the spiders and crocodiles. Silent Forest is essentially a better Windy Hill zone, and that's really reflected here. Number 6. Silent Forest Act 4. The main gimmick of this stage is the lights going out and having to be reactivated by pulling levers, though it's only used in the second half. Reminds me of the silhouette stages from Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze if you've ever played those games. There's also some nice movement of the camera, making certain jumps look and feel more dynamic than they actually are. This stage is also one of the very few in this game to incorporate a wisp well, that being the drill wisp. You have to hit certain lights to open the way forward while avoiding bombs and pits. For once, it seems the devs designed a level from the beginning with one of the wisps in mind. The darkness makes navigation slightly more difficult, but adds a nice ambience to the level. This mechanic is also integrated into the boss fight, and this is one of the only boss fights in the game I enjoyed. You have to hit Zora enough times to defeat him before he and his clones take out the ground beneath you, but you can only damage him while the lights are on. The only negative is it's possible to kill him in one hit, so the fight ends before it even begins. Number 5. Tropical Coast Act 3. Sometimes upping the complexity of a game mechanic at a later stage doesn't work out for the better, and I think this stage perfectly exemplifies that. It's much, much better than Lava Mountain 3. Green rails speed you up, red ones slow you down. There are still plenty of chances to fail here, particularly with the gates you can splat into if you don't hit the switches to open them, but there's no cheat bullshit that'll really frustrate you. No instant kill exploding minecarts, and no awkward moments with the camera. It has the same environments as Lava Mountain 3, so on that front the stages are equal. A relaxed stroll is usually better than an agonizing crawl. Number 4. Tropical Coast Act 4. This stage is a weird one for me. While I recorded the footage for this video, I zoned out for at least half my initial run. When I watched it back to write this script, it was a lot better than I remembered. It uses the rocket wisp to travel between planets/areas, so that's fine enough. Honestly, the same function could have been achieved with just a spring, but this is far from the worst implementation of wisps in this game. This stage also messes around with a lot of cool camera angles and has a nice mixture of challenges pushing you to go fast and those encouraging you to slow down and be more precise. It also expands upon the large fruit gimmick by adding pineapples that actively move away from Sonic, and it takes a bit of testing to make them go exactly where you want. Beyond that, large groups of fruit appear at once and can surround you if you aren't careful. This stage looks rather mediocre at first glance, but I think it's far more interesting if you dig deeper. But I will say, listening to a man who seems to be at least 100 years old talk about going clubbing is definitely a bit strange.
It's glorious to prepare for battle once more. I feel like I'm 100 years old again. Perhaps when I'm finished, I'll go clubbing.
Number 3. Silent Forest Act 2. These last few levels reach a standard of quality, making them contenders as some of the best 3D Sonic stages period, not just the best stages in this game. I love stages with elements from the background coming into the foreground. Metallic animals often wait for you to reach their position to jump above you and come crashing down, which can not only damage you but also send you flying straight into a freshly made bottomless pit if you're not careful. But the major attraction is the stealth section. You have to use trees and objects in the foreground to hide Sonic from the robotic owl's gaze in the background. If you get spotted, Sonic gets taken by Satan's minions and you have to try again. You need to navigate some smaller platforms to get through this section, and a screw up can easily be fatal. The weather and atmosphere in this level are just perfect. Seeing the forest at night combined with the lighted torches and crescent moon, everything just comes together perfectly. If we're going purely on looks, this will be my favorite stage in the game. But since we're not, there are 2 left to cover. Number 2, Desert Ruins Act 3. This level is better than any level of Sweet Mountain in Sonic Colors. Yes, I said it, so if you're a Sonic Colors fan, please don't tear me apart in the comment section. Or, do. Your choice. It features the most dynamic camera use of any level in the game, making the twists and turns Sonic takes look a lot crazier and more attractive to the eyes. Granted, the whole stage is made of food, and food is always attractive to the eyes. Okay, maybe not always. The level design is a nice mixture of high-speed straight shots and slightly more methodical vertical platforming that can still be done really quickly, it's just slightly more difficult to pull off. This one is meant to be a break from the more standard environments and give you some fun things to look at as opposed to being a super difficult or technical challenge. I always look forward to revisiting this one. It almost reignites that relentless gaming energy I had when I was a kid. Number 1, Lava Mountain Act 3. The last bona fide stage in the game, since Act 4 is just a boss fight. In terms of combining all the previous challenges into one final epic level, this level knocks that out of the park. The 2D sections feature a slowly rising pool of lava that insta-kills on contact, so one slip off a platform and it might be all over for you. As you progress, these areas get more hazards thrown in, including spiked balls and conveyor belts that mess with Sonic's speed. As in Lava Mountain 1, this area features rematches against the Deadly Six, but here each rematch is a uniquely designed encounter that is actually possible to lose without something fluky happening. If the other boss fights in the game were at least this good, the game will be a much better product in my eyes. You also get plenty of chances to use the Hover Wisp, which I took advantage of seamlessly. It wraps up with a 2-phase battle against Zavok. The first phase is similar to the Sky Road encounter but better since its attacks are harder to dodge and you don't have a mountain of rings to rely on. In phase 2 he goes full Donkey Kong and grows about 100 times. You have to climb up the platforms to evade him while slamming the red blocks down onto him until he dies. You get ample blocks to do the job, but if you don't take him down in time, he'll reach the top of the screen and crush you, so you gotta be fast but not too fast. This stage has some of the most challenging platforming in the game and showcases the best of what Sonic Lost World has to offer. It's just a shame most of the levels don't live up to how good this one is. Well, there you have it guys, it's done. All 28 stages. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. As I said before, this game doesn't have many stages I consider outright terrible. Sonic Lost World really falls flat for me because of its lackluster story and unbelievably bad writing in certain cutscenes. I've thought about making a video like this for Sonic Generations, but I could never really find the motivation since I don't exactly love that game. If that's something you want to see me do in the future, leave a comment and if there's enough support I may give it a shot. I've already made a video ranking every stage in Sonic Adventure 2 from worst to best, so if you enjoyed watching this video, you should check that one out. I'll leave a link in the description and I'll place it on the outro screen as well. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.